Hey everyone, Razzbowski here, and welcome back to Chapter 2 of the Five Nights at Freddy's novel, The Silver Eyes. Where's the way out? She exclaimed, and John came over to help. They hurriedly searched the walls, and Jessica chased the light beam spiraling across the floor. Just as they were all back to their feet, Carlton came trotting in. I knocked over a bunch of pots in the kitchen, Carlton exclaimed, an apology amid the panic. I thought you were with us, Charlie said. I wanted to see if there was any food left, Carlton said, not making it clear if he'd found anything or not. Seriously? John laughed. That night guard might have heard, Jessica said anxiously. Come on, we have to get out of here. They started for the door and Jessica started running. The rest took after her, picking up speed as they reached the hallway until they were racing as though something were behind them. Run! Run! John called out as they burst into giggles. The panic feigned, but the urgency real. They squeezed back through the door one by one and pushed it shut with the same painful squeal, Carlton and John leaning on it until it sealed. They all took hold of the shelf, hefting it back into place and replacing the tools so that it appeared undisturbed. Look good, Jessica said, and John tugged her arm, guiding her away. They made their way quickly but carefully back the way they came, using only Carlton's penlight, back through the empty hallways and the open atrium to the car parking lot. The guard's light did not appear again. A little anticlimactic, Carlton said with disappointment, checking back one more time, hoping that they were being chased. Are you kidding me? Charlie said as she went back to her car, already pulling the keys free from her pocket. She felt as though something locked deep inside her had been disturbed, and she was not sure if it was a good thing or a bad thing. That was fun, John exclaimed, and Jessica laughed. That was terrifying, she cried. It could be both, Carlton said, grinning widely. Charlie began to laugh, and John joined in. What? Jessica said. Charlie shook her head, still laughing a little. It's just, we're all exactly the same as we were. I mean, we're totally different and older and everything, but we're the same. You and Carlton sound like you did when you were 6. Right, Jessica said, rolling her eyes again, but John nodded. I know what you mean, he said. And so does Jessica. She just doesn't like to admit it. He glanced back at them all. Is everyone sure the guard didn't see us? He said. Well, we can outrun him now, Carlton said reasonably, his hands resting on the car. I guess, John said, but he did not sound convinced. You haven't changed either, you know, Jessica said with a certain satisfaction. Stop looking for problems where there aren't any. Still, John said, glancing back again, we should get out of here. I don't want to push our luck. See you all tomorrow then, Jessica said as they parted ways. Carlton gave a little wave over his shoulder. Charlie's heart sank a little as Jessica settled herself into the passenger seat, tidily buckling herself in. She had not been looking forward to this. It wasn't that she didn't like Jessica, just that being alone with her was uncomfortable. She still wasn't much more than a stranger. Yet Charlie was still exhilarated from the night's adventure, and the lingering adrenaline gave her new confidence. She smiled at Jessica. After the night, they suddenly had something very much in common. Do you know which way the motel is? She asked, and Jessica nodded and reached for the purse down at her feet. It was small and black with a long strap, and on the drive to the construction site, Charlie had already removed her lip gloss, a mirror, a pack of breath mints, a sewing kit, and a tiny hairbrush. Now she pulled out a small notebook and pen. Charlie smiled. Sorry, how much stuff do you have in that thing? She said, and Jessica looked at her with a grin. The secrets of the purse must not be disclosed, she said playfully, and they both laughed. Jessica started reading Charlie the directions, and Charlie obeyed, turning left and right without paying much attention to her surroundings. Jessica had already checked in, so they went straight to their room, a small beige box of a room with 2 double beds covered in a shiny brown spreads. Charlie set her bags on the bed closest to the door, and Charlie went to the window. As you can see, I splurged on a room with a view, she said, and flung the curtains open dramatically to reveal 2 dumpsters and a dried-out hedge. I want my wedding to be here. Right, Charlie said, amused. Jessica's prim demure and old-fashioned model looks made it easy to forget that she was smart as well. As children, she remembered being slightly intimidated every time they got to play together, then remembering after a few minutes how much she liked her. She wondered if it was hard for her to make friends looking the way she did, but it wasn't the kind of thing you could really ask someone. Jessica flopped down on the bed, lying across to face Charlie. So, tell me about you, she said confidently, mocking a talk show host or someone's nosy mother. Charlie shrugged awkwardly, put on the spot. What does that mean? She said. Jessica laughed. I don't know. What an awful thing to ask, right? I mean, how do you answer that? How about school? Any cute boys? Charlie lay down across the bed, mimicking Jessica's position. Cute boys? What are we? 12? Well, Jessica said impatiently. I don't know, she said. Not really. Her class was too small. She had known most of the people in it since she moved in with Aunt Jen, and dating anyone, liking them like that, seemed forced and altogether unappealing. She told Jessica as much. Most of the girls, if they want to date, they date older guys, she said. And you don't have an older guy? Jessica said, teasing. Nah, Charlie said. I'd figured I'd wait around for our batch to grow up. Right. Jessica burst out laughing before quickly thinking of something to share. Last year there was this guy, Donnie, she said. I was gaga for him, like really. He was so sweet to everyone. He wore black all the time, and he had this black curly hair, so thick all I could think about when I sat beside him was burying my face in it. I was so distracted that I ended up getting an A- in trig. He was super artistic, a poet, and he carried around one of those black leather notebooks, and he was always scribbling something in it, but he would never show anybody. She sighed dreamily. I figured if I could get him to show me his poetry, I would really come to know his soul, you know. So, did he ever? Oh yeah, she nodded emphatically. I asked him out, finally, you know, 'cause he was shy and was never going to ask me, and we went to the movies and made out a little, and then we went and hung out on the roof of his apartment building, and I told him all about how I wanted to study ancient civilizations and go on archaeological digs and stuff, and he showed me his poems. And did you come to know his soul? Charlie said, excited to be included in girl talk, something she felt like she'd never really gotten to participate in before. Charlie nodded eagerly, but not too eagerly. She calmed herself as Jessica scooted forward on the bed to whisper. The poems were awful. I didn't know it was possible to both be melodramatic and boring at the same time. I mean, just reading them made me embarrassed for him. She covered her face with her hands. Charlie laughed. What did you do? What could I do? I told him that I wasn't going to work and I went home. Wait, right after you read his poetry, I still had the notebook in my hand. Oh, Jessica, that's awful. You must have broken his heart. I know, I felt so bad, but it was like the words just came out of my mouth. I couldn't stop myself. Did he ever speak to you again? Oh yeah, he's perfectly nice. But no, he takes statistics and economics and wears sweater vests. You broke him. Charlie threw a pillow at Jessica, who sat up and caught it. I know, he'll probably be a millionaire stockbroker instead of a starving artist, and it's all my fault. She grinned. Come on, he'll thank me someday. Charlie shook her head. Do you really want to be an archaeologist? Yeah, Jessica said. Huh, said Charlie. Sorry, I thought... She shook her head. Sorry, that is really cool. You thought I wanted to do something in fashion, Jessica said. Well, yeah. It's okay, Jessica said. I did too. I mean, I do. I love fashion, but there's only so much to it, you know? I think it's amazing to think how people lived 1,000 years ago, or 2,000, or 10. They were just like us, but so different. I like to imagine living in other times, other places, wonder who I would have been. Anyway, what about you? Charlie rolled onto her back, looking up at the ceiling. The tiles were made of loose, stained styrofoam, and the one above her head was askew. I hope there aren't any bugs up there, she thought. I don't know, she said slowly. I think it's really cool that you know who you want to be, but I never really had that kind of plan. Well, it's not like you have to figure it out now, Jessica said. Maybe, Charlie said. But I don't know. You know what you want to do. John's known since he could hold a pencil that he always wanted to be a writer, and he's already getting published. Even Carlin. I don't know what he has planned, but you can just see that there's a scheme brewing behind all the kidding around. But I don't have that kind of direction. It doesn't really matter, Jessica said. I don't think most people know at our age. Plus, I think I might change my mind or not get into college or something. You never know what's going to happen. Hey, I'm going to get changed. I want to get some sleep. She went into the bathroom and Charlie stayed where she was, gazing at the sorry-looking ceiling. She supposed it was becoming a defect, her earnest refusal to consider her past or future. Live in the present moment, her Aunt Jen said often, and Charlie had taken that to heart. Don't dwell on the past. Don't worry about things that may never happen. In the 8th grade, she had taken a shop class, vaguely hoping the mechanical work might spark something of her father's talent, might unleash some inherited passion lying latent within her, but it had not. She made a clumsy-looking birdhouse for the backyard. She never took another shop class, and the birdhouse only attracted one squirrel, who promptly knocked it down. Jessica came out of the bathroom wearing pink striped pajamas, and Charlie went in to get ready for bed, changing and brushing her teeth hurriedly. When she came out again, Jessica was already under the covers with the light by her bed turned off. Charlie turned hers off too, but the light from the parking lot still shone in through the window, somehow filtering past the dumpsters. Charlie stared up at the ceiling again, her hands behind her head. "Do you know what's going to happen tomorrow?" she said. "I don't really know," Jessica said. "I know it's a ceremony at school." "Yeah, I know that," Charlie said. "Are we going to have to do anything? Like, do they want us to speak?" "I don't think so," Jessica said. "Why? Do you want to say something?" "No, I was just wondering." "Do you ever think about him?" Jessica said. "Sometimes. I try not to," Charlie said half truthfully. She had sealed off the subject of Michael in her mind, locked him tight behind a mental wall that she has never touched. It wasn't an effort to avoid the subject. In fact, it was an effort to think about him now. "What about you?" she asked Jessica. "Not really," she said. "It's weird, right? Something happens and it's the worst thing you can ever imagine, and it's just burned into you all the time, like it's going to go on forever, and then years go by and it's just another thing that happened. Not like it's not important or terrible, but it's in the past, and just as much as everything else, you know?" "I guess," Charlie said, but she did know. "I just try not to think about those things." "Me too. You know, I just went to a funeral last week." I'm sorry," Charlie said, sitting up. "Are you okay?" Yeah, I'm fine," Jessica said. "I barely even knew him. He was just an old relative who lived 3 states away. I think I met him once, and I hardly remember it. We mostly went for my mom's sake. But it was an old-fashioned funeral parlour, like in the movies, with an open coffin. And we all walked by the coffin, and when it was my turn, I looked at him. And he could have been sleeping, you know? Just calm and restful. Like people always say dead people look. There was nothing that I could have pointed out that made me think, dead, if you ask me. Every feature of his face looked the same as if he were alive. His skin was the same, his hair was the same, as if he were alive. But he wasn't alive. And I just knew it. I would have known it immediately, even if he wasn't, you know, in a coffin." "I know what you mean. There's just something about them when they're," Charlie said softly. "It sounds stupid when I say it, but when I looked at him, he looked so alive, and yet I just knew that he wasn't. Oh, it made my skin crawl." "That's the worst thing, isn't it?" Charlie said. "The things that act alive but aren't." "What?" Jessica said. "I mean things that look alive but aren't," Charlie said quickly. "We should get some sleep," she said. "Did you set an alarm?" "Yeah," Jessica said. "Good night." "Night." Charlie turned the light off, knowing sleep was still a long way off. She knew what Jessica meant, probably better than Jessica did. The artificial shine in eyes that followed you as you moved, just like a real person's would. The slight lurch of realistic animals who did not move the way a living thing should. The occasional programming glitch that made a robot appear to have done something new, creative. Her childhood had been filled with them. She had grown up in this strange gap between life and not life. It had been her world. It had been her father's world. Charlie closed her eyes. What did that world do to him? And there we go, guys. That's the end of chapter 2. Oh, baby, this is getting so damn good. I mean, we've gone back to Freddy's. Apparently Freddy's was knocked down. It was leveled so they could build this new shopping mall or whatever it was. But they found a secret entrance, or they found a space where they could get into Freddy's. It was still built. Why it was still built? Why is this place abandoned? We're going to find out. We're going to find out. Obviously, the suits are going to be haunted at some point, but how are we going to go back in? We've escaped, thinking everything's fine. What's going to drive us back? What's going to drive us back into the place? How is everything going to get solved? How are the murders going to happen? I don't know, but the writing is so damn good. We're getting to know the characters. We're getting to know John. We're getting to know Jessica better, and we're getting to know them all, and it's absolutely fantastic. If you enjoyed this episode, then please hit that like button. It really, really is appreciated. It's going to have been split up over a couple of parts, just like the chapter 1, and we're going to be moving on to chapter 2 real quickly. Either way, though, guys, I've been Razzbowski, you've been the beautiful bastards, as always, for watching, and I love Each and every single one of you. Goodbye! Are you looking for sweet and oh so sexy deals on computer games and much, much more? Head over to g2a.com, where you can get a massive variety of games, codes, and more for discounted prices. And if you go ahead and use the coupon code Razz at the checkout, you'll get that sweet and sexy 3% off. Go over there right now. Click the link in the description, you beautiful bastard.